buttons. Just open the app and tap podcasts. Ready, set, start listening, and have a great true crime podcast week.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful February the 26th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
You know, Charlton, it's exciting and it's sad. We're entering in the last broadcast of Black History Month for 2021. But it's so nice to talk about the accomplishments and diaspora of black people during this month, Charlton, and it's, you know, the power that black women possess.
Yep.
I want to give a big shout out to Renee Montgomery, former Wnba player, All-Star, and MVP, Charlton. Today she became co-owner of the Atlanta Dream of the WNBA.
Wow.
Getting rid of its previous owner, the racist and Kelly Loeffler,
Yep.
who lost the Senate race to Raphael Warnock. And now we have black ownership in the WNBA. But I also want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. They're always taking ownership of what they do.
Always taking ownership. You know, black women created the universe. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars never stop arriving. Also, all around the world, say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsor. Here for the show, I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I love pausing, Big C. That's very good news that black women are also making more milestones in the world of the sports universe. Really appreciate that, Big C. I will never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why should everybody care?
Charlton, we need the Society of America to make advancement against suicide in America, Charlton. We lose over 24 veterans a day to suicide in this country. A very horrific number. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton. But to think about the suicide rate in America is just unfathomable, Charlton. I know we're going through COVID-19. Many people are struggling, as well as other crises in America.
Yeah.
But our military gave us the opportunity to give those opportunities for us to go out and have the problems that we go through by keeping this a sovereign nation. And we cannot, as a country, turn our back on our military the way that we have done. This is Black History Month. Everybody needs to move forward in thinking about the rights of all people, Charlton, especially our military and former military personnel. The suicide rate needs to find a way to stop that.
Yep.
Beyond the 800 suicide number that we give out as a group, Charlton.
Big C, very well said. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And you can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones. Also very happy to be affiliated with Valley, Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, Direct TV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, putting people back to work just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. Sports teams are doing it. You can do it too. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com. Our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 wholesale lender in the United States of America. Also, I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from all over the world. And I really do appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. And I hope our brothers and sisters in Cairo, Egypt, where we're growing with Big C Sports Podcast, I hope that they enjoy our version of sports in the United States. I know a lot of people love soccer and tennis and every other sport out there too. But Big C, I wanna just go back to how you opened, because there's breaking news to me, and I try to say that West Coast news is a lot more quick to the universe than the news in the South. But I know the way the earth rotates, you guys tend to get the news a little bit sooner. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, we're the forefront of what advancement is in America when you think about what's going in the world, especially during Black History Month, Charleston.
Yeah.
And to have this situation take place down in the city of Atlanta, where Renee Montgomery became one of the majority owners of the Atlanta Dream, the former owner and racist, bigoted owner, Kelly Loeffler, former United States Senator, who was all against Black Lives Matter, and she was against her players standing up for that stance, Charleston, back during the summer. I'm glad that she's out of the league now, and we have Black ownership to run that business now in Atlanta.
You know, I really appreciate that, Big C. It's just how the universe lines things up. We know we're coming up on, well, we're not coming up on in the Black History Month, but mainstream America, they might say enough already. It's all fair. It's more people learning about their real ancestry, Big C. Ancestry.com doesn't tell everybody that all life came from the African continent, but our brothers and sisters in Cairo, Egypt, they understand that. But I've got to ask you this question, because we talk so much about advocating for women, and it does my heart happy to understand that every single thing that's happened in this country, there's always been a pushback toward black men and black women. Not by everybody, but the laws were designed to not include us. So when I hear that in Black History Month, you have an African-American woman that's bought part of a WNBA franchise before a black man was able to buy into the NFL. Big C, that's very touching to my heart, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's different in the NFL. You have to have sole ownership, and you can sell shares in an NFL organization, but you only have one owner. And in the WNBA, there are partnerships that are akin to the league, allowing the league to be able to expand and grow and keep it soluble financially, Charlton. But this move today by Renee Montgomery and her partners is a great move for the advancement of colored people in America, Charlton, showing that they have the ability to run a top-flight professional organization in this country.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's anything that we can learn. I know in the NBA, it isn't this amazing. It just popped into my mind. In the NBA, we have Michael Jordan owns the Charlotte franchise, and I believe he's the only person of color, unless I'm wrong, that owns an NBA. So you have the ability out there, and it's going to maybe grow, if that makes sense. But I just appreciate, especially in Black History Month, that the new ownership is a woman of color. And oftentimes, as you know, Big C, no one's trying to say that everyone that's non-black is anti-black. We know that's not the case at all. Abolitionists also helped in slavery in this country. But for young black people, when you grow up and you think about ownership as opposed to just playing, if that makes sense to you, what kind of paradigm shift will young black girls have by looking at an owner of a WNBA team and saying, you know what, I too can be her? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's not a paradigm shift, Charlton, if you're looking down south. I mean, this is a hub of black empowerment in the United States. There are so many progressive black people in the southern part of the United States. If you think about the equal rights movement, Charlton, all of those came from the southern leadership in the United States. So black people have been empowered all throughout the history of the black United States,
Yeah.
in the black southern part of the United States. And they have so many people that have done so many great things. You think about Martin Luther King, he was from the South. Jesse Jackson, the first black man to run for president in the United States, he was from the South. Shirley Chisholm, the first black woman of the United States to run for president,
Yeah.
he was from the South. So many of black leaders progressively have come from the South and set the table for what everybody else has been able to do in the United States.
Yeah, that's very impressive and enlightening. Does my heart happy. I was having so many dreams last night. You know, my mother always baked cakes, and every time as a young boy walking into the house, coming in from school, we could always smell something baking. Something was always baking, whether it was some fish that was frying. Big C, sometimes she'd bake those too, but just always baking something. I didn't have to go to a grocery store to buy a cake because Mom always baked cake, always had some food at home. And I just realized my mother grew up in the South, in the Jim Crow South, and left to come out to California. My father also, his family grew up in the South. They went up north to Illinois, Chicago, then out to California, and that's where they met. But I think about what you just said right now. As a young black boy, I remember always waiting for Jet magazine and Ebony magazine. And there you would see some of the milestones that African Americans were able to be a part of. But Big C, every time I looked at a bookstore, it was always a very small segment of a newsstand, but it was ordered into our homes. And I just appreciate the fact that just like seeing my mother baking those cakes, smelling those rolls when I walked in the house, sometimes those fish that couldn't get off the hook, Big C, she brought those home and cooked them up for everybody. I really feel just happy that black women, and we have now today the first black woman vice president in the history of this country. It just kind of brings everything together, so it makes me very happy, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you have to realize, Charlton, there's 150 years of black college education in the South. There is a generational wealth of education in the South, as well as black businesses, Charlton. 150 years of black business.
Yeah.
So this is normal suit for Southern blacks in the United States to take the forefront in leadership. You even talked about Michael Jordan earlier.
Yeah.
He's from the South.
Yeah.
So when you think about the roles that blacks have played in the advancement of black people in America, it is led by Southern blacks, Charlton.
Yeah, I'm really appreciate you bringing that information to the sports universe. I also want to just touch a little bit on Black History Month. 2021 theme, the Black Family, Big C. And really, according to Dr. Lee King Gregor Mendel, I want to match her, and instead of asking other people, I'm going to do it more because I do it, but not enough. When people talk about Ancestry.com and where do people come from, just Google where all life came from. If mainstream realizes that they too come from the dominant root, Big C, maybe they'll have more respect for it as we have the Republicans having some leadership conference in Orlando, Florida on Sunday, and they're bringing the guy who caused the insurrection in the United States of America, Big C. I want to just touch real quick on the black family representation, identity, and diversity, explores the African diaspora, Big C, and the spread of black families across the United States of America. Her name is Zora Neale Hurston. Born 1891, lived up until 1960, was a black anthropologist, a folklorist, and author. She became a leading light of the Harlem Renaissance, Big C. Think about this. She had a lot of frustration that a lot of people feel today sometimes with white liberals who were fighting segregation, Big C. She said, in her words, I have no viewpoint on this subject particularly other than a fierce desire for human justice. Think about that when you hear about the conservative Republican meeting coming up in Orlando on Sunday with the guy who caused an insurrection. She also mentioned that the rest of it is up to the individual. Personally, she has no desire for white association except where she sought, and the pleasure is mutual, Big C. That feeling grows out of her own self-respect. She also spelled out her logic about Negro leaders. People, I hope that people can understand this. She knew that the Anglo-Saxon mentality is one of violence. Ask the Native Americans if you don't believe that. Violence happens to be the religion of a lot of mainstream people, Big C. That's why a lot of black men still argue about getting the interview for some type of job. And that violence has been the religion that's gained everything that he's had by violence, Big C, and respects nothing else. In her own words, when I suggest our leaders that the white man is not going to surrender for mere words, that he has fought and died for, and if we want anything substantial, we must speak with the same weapons immediately they object. And I'm not being practical, Big C. Think about that as you have this conservative group that's going to ask POTUS, the insurrectionists, to speak in Orlando, Florida on Sunday. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, as late as, January 6, 2021, white society has showed that they're willing to put violence out to keep their way of life about what they believe in, even though it's not theirs. I mean, in the inception of this country, Charlton, was all about violence from the white man.
Yeah.
When they came out and took over America, Charlton, it was about violence against the Native Americans who were already here in this country. They used violence against those people. To keep black people enslaved, Charlton, it was done through violence.
Yeah.
As they fought to separate this country, it was done through violence. So everything, when you look at it, is done through violence for the white people to gain the power that they have. And they have used it through every level of American society against its own people. So they're not willing to give up what they feel is theirs, Charlton. I know you say you get not because you do not ask not.
Yeah.
We have asked for equality ever since we've been in this country, Charlton. Ask. The word is always wait.
Yeah.
Be patient. The time is not right. What is the right time to have equality in this country? When you read the 14th Amendment, it was about equality in this country. It is the most used document, Charlton, in the United States legislature and the Supreme Court when it comes to lawsuits. The 14th Amendment, which called for equality of all people that were born in this country, Charlton, that were American citizens. They do not use it. They use it against us. It's actually been gutted by the Supreme Court, the 14th Amendment, which also included the Voting Rights Act in the original 14th Amendment, Charlton. You didn't need one come in the mid-'60s. All of those things are part of the Constitution. But white men have decided to gut it and make it almost unusable for black people.
Yeah, that's very well said. And again, for people that doubt it, they're having a conference for the conservative Republican movement in Orlando, Florida. Happened to be the same city that had the NBA bubble, if that makes any sense to you. Some things they're just trying to tell you, we don't want you to have any power. But I'm not cynical, but I do see between the lines, Big C. Zora Neale Hurston, you can Google her name and realize that she was a very, very, very powerful woman, and she taught the truth, and some people don't like hearing the truth. But it's all fair and level word, Big C. I want to touch a little bit on the world of college football. Speaking of truth, I love the world of college football, Big C. To me, it's been part of the pleasure of growing up in this country. I know our friends over in Cairo, Egypt, Big C, they focus on their form of football is soccer, but here in the United States, we play where you tackle people more. But the University of Texas, the last state to abolish slavery, called it Juneteenth, University of Texas Regents, they approved football coach Steve Sarkisian a $34,200,000 contract, Big C. The Regents have approved the new Texas football coach Steve Sarkisian's guaranteed $34,200,000 contract, giving the okay for more than $21 million guaranteed. That's just for his staff alone, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, everything's bigger in Texas, Charlton, and so they got big money. They were able to buy out Herman, their previous coach, Charlton. They bought out Charlie Strong before that. They bought out Mac Brown before that.
Yeah, they bought out Charlie Strong as African American. They bought out Mac Brown. They really haven't had the success that they had under Mac Brown. I think he's been the winningest coach down there in many, many moons. Took them to their last national championship win, even though they also lost the national championship game. They cheated USC down in the Rose Bowl back in the 2005 Rose Bowl. Everybody heard about that. And then they also lost another national championship game to Alabama in that same Rose Bowl. That was Coach Mac Brown. But when you think about Sarkisian, again, he was at the University of Washington, got let go there for some substance abuse problems, Big C. And then the University of Southern California, they decided substance abuse, nothing wrong with that. They brought him in to coach the Trojans, Big C. And he had some other issues with the USC Trojans. They let him go because he had some substance abuse issues, Big C. ends up down in your neck of the woods with Nick Saban down in Alabama, and they let him go to a different frontier. At the same time, the guy with his background picking up a $34 million contract, and as we talked about yesterday, he's Caucasian. I think there's only 11 African-American head coaches in Division I football. Big C, your thoughts? And again, having a little bit of phone issues with, I guess Ted Cruz came back and decided to hike the Big C Sports podcast line. But again, Steve Sarkisian had the substance abuse issues, Big C. We talked about 11 African-American head coaches that did not have substance abuse problems. But even with his background, and I wish everybody will, he still gets $34.2 million, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, this is Southern hospitality. They're looking to win. And certain universities, they're not caring about the character of an individual. That's been proven down in Texas. We will hire you and fire you and pay you to be gone. That's what they've done. They're looking at Sarkisian, what he's done in the past couple of years, being down at Alabama on Nick Saban's staff, hoping that he can bring some of that mojo down to Texas, that he can keep some of the star players in the state and they won't leave.
Yeah.
He's paying his assistants, Charleston, top dollar so he can bring in some of the best assistants in the country. And that's the level of competitiveness now in big-time college football.
Yeah. Yep.
It's all about winning. It's all about having a good old boy who looks like you on the sideline when you're sitting out there at some boosters event, Charleston, and everybody loves to drink. And so when they drink, they get the loose lips and they'll say anything, and they don't want somebody to be offended by it.
Yeah. Well, Flip Wilson told his loose lips sink ships, but his starting salary, and no one's hating on it, it'd just be nice to have if you're an African-American man and you get released from two major universities because of substance abuse and alcoholism. I doubt if you get to sign up for a $34 million salary, but his starting salary at Texas is going to be $5,200,000, escalating to $6,200,000 in the final year. Sarkisian's contract also includes 20 hours of use of a private plane annually, Big C. You know they will add onto that too down in Texas. And $250,000 in relocation expenses, a one-time payment of $1.2 million on December 31st, 2024, if he's still the coach at Texas, and you know he will be. And then the contract also includes non-guaranteed annual performance incentives of nearly $1 million. It's amazing that you could have alcohol and substance abuse problems, and hopefully he's going to do fine, but it'd be great if men who didn't have those problems also got the same lion's share of a chance. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you can't expect for society to be equal, Charlton, and that's the reason why I brought up the 14th Amendment earlier. It was for equality in America, but the Supreme Court gutted it, so you don't have equality in America, and that's why we're still fighting for it here over 100 years after the 14th Amendment was passed, Charlton.
Yeah.
So Steve Sarkisian getting this job, this is what they do. They take care of each other, whether it's nepotism, good old boys network. These things are going to continuously occur in America. The one I'm most surprised about is the performance bonus that they throw in up to $1 million.
Yeah.
I think you hire a head coach in college football to win regardless. So to say that you're going to pay him more for winning, why the hell you give him a base contract?
Is there a performance bonus for losing is the question, Big Z. Obviously, yes, there is a performance bonus for being able to lose your job because of alcohol and substance abuse. It's called a $34 million contract at the University of Texas. We'll see what happens. It's all fair and level more. But I do want to ask you, how's he going to compete? You can look really good when you're an assistant with Nick Saban. I think most of the guys that get coaching jobs down in the SEC and other programs in the South, they were assistants to Nick Saban. So they look really good because they were under his umbrella, Big C. But then whenever he went up against them, I don't think any of his assistants have beaten him in a game, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the thing about this, Charlton, he's not in the SEC, so he's not going to be seeing Nick Saban. He's going to the Big 12, Charlton. His competition there is Lincoln Riley. That's really the number one guy he has to worry about. As long as he's beating Oklahoma, Charlton, on an annual basis, he will be a god in the state of Texas.
Yeah, if they get to a national championship game, he'll most likely have to face Old St. Nick, but it's all fair in level war. Maybe when they expand the college football playoffs, he'll get to run up against the Trojans of Southern California. It's all fair and level war, Big C. And speaking of Coach Sarkisian, I wish him nothing but the best. College football, latest congressional, There's a bill, it's called the NIL bill, that would allow for athletes to enter the draft and then return to college, I guess, if they're not selected. I think that's a good thing. Amateur Athletics Protection and Compensation Act of 2021 is scheduled to be introduced this week in the U.S. Senate by Senator Jerry Moran. He's a Republican out of Kentucky after he gets back from the Southern Republican Convention in Orlando, Florida Sunday. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I've always thought that this was a proper bill to have because a lot of these college athletes, NBA, and basketball and football are not that intelligent, Charlton. When you have all these underclassmen that are declaring for the draft and have no chance of getting drafted, but they have these high hopes and dreams of playing professional basketball. But when they go undrafted, Charlton, that they have no place to go. Their education is done. The scholarship has been yanked from underneath them. I think this is a proper move by our elected officials to allow these kids to go back to college if they don't sign with an agent within 7 days of the draft, Charlton, to give them an opportunity to continue their career on the collegiate level as well as stay in school full time.
I think that's a good thing, and I believe the only reason that is happening is because a lot of young college athletes, and whether they have lawyers, they usually have lawyers involved at some level. They're I won't say complaining, but they're advocating for themselves. I think that's a great thing because a coach, Big C, they can seek better opportunities, just like Coach Sarkisian. They can leave for greener pastures if that makes sense to you. And if it doesn't work out, they're not prevented from going on and making money elsewhere. But the kids that they've recruited to come and be their prodigal father for the next 3 years or 4 years, those kids are stuck under an umbrella that says, you got to stay through rich or poor till you leave the school to be part. It's about time, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think these are proper moves by the Congress and the Senate, Charlton, over the past couple of years in making progressive bills to put players on the same equal playing surface that coaches, that they have the flexibility to either decide to advance their career or stay in college. But they can also do the feelers. Well, they can send out the feelers and see if a team is interested in giving them money. If they're not willing to give them more money than what the college is, then they can stay at that college. And so I think if you're going to level the playing surface, this is the proper thing to do, to give athletes rights.
Yeah, they got to have rights, Big C. It just makes sense. At least some of the rights that the coaches have. Under the bill, the athletes can sign endorsement deals as long as the agreements do not violate a school's code of conduct, and recruits can sign the same deals as long as they're not considered recruiting inducements, Big C. I mean, come on. They've been doing inducements all for a long time called a paper bag, Big C. Moran's draft provision is the first such concept included in the Republican-backed NIL bill. It grants athletes the rights to enter a sports draft and retain their eligibility as long as they do not receive compensation. That's the part that I have a problem with. How are you going to tell someone, Big C, that they can pursue opportunities as long as they don't make any money, then they can come back? That doesn't make sense, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, no, Charlton, it does make perfectly sense if you understand how the bill is written. If you enter the draft, once you declare, you normally lose your scholarship at a university. You lose your eligibility to play on the collegiate level because you've declared yourself to become a professional athlete. If you declare yourself, if this bill passes and you declare yourself and you don't get drafted, you get 150 to 200 underclassmen every year declare for the NFL draft.
Yeah.
That's not counting the seniors. The NFL is only going to draft 258 players, Jonathan.
Yeah.
So you realistically are going to get half of those underclassmen not drafted by the NFL. Now they no longer had eligibility, so they were hoping to be able to sign a free agent deal to go in and be a training camp dummy, Charlton, hoping to make the team, hopefully.
Yeah.
But now they can go back to college out of this deal. So this is a great save your face for the athlete, that you don't lose your scholarship. You're allowed to go back into that university, or with the transfer rules that they have now, transfer to another university as long as you don't take money. If you're undrafted, you're not guaranteed any money by a professional league.
Yeah. I still don't like the fact that they tell you as long as you stay poor and destitute, then you can come back and play for us for free, whatever they give you the stipend.
If you don't get drafted and no one offers you to sign as a free agent, What options would you have before this?
Because there's a lot of guys that fell through the draft. Basically, they didn't get drafted. You should never tell a human being, we're going to take you a few hundred miles from your home or 1,000 miles from your home, bring you to our university where Sarkisian gets $34 million. But if you enter the draft and you don't get drafted, you can only make $0. That to me doesn't make any sense. But I know is wired.
Maybe you're not understanding what you're saying. If you don't get drafted and you don't get signed by a professional team, NBA or NFL, how much money would you make? I'm asking you a question on that.
Yeah, the question is, we're going to take the Big C pause, and when I come back, I'm going to answer that question because there's a lot of ways to get money outside of some team picking you up. We'll take what's called the Big C pause, and in the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause. I want to say you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps that you can follow Big C Sports, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Also, I want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said, let there be light. Open your cell phones and say it. Play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Big C, back to that thing about telling a young man, we're going to give our coach, for the most part white, except for 11 of them at Division I, $34 million. But you as a young, for the most part, they're going to recruit black kids, Big C. You can go into the draft, but if you don't get chosen, as long as you don't take any money to improve your life, like maybe someone wants to offer you a deal for these college, what do they have, these games that they play on TV, EA Sports or whatever they are, they'll have college teams and the players, they're telling you if someone approaches you, you can't make any money. And if you don't make any money, then you're eligible to come back to school. I think that hurts black kids because for the most part, most of the white kids, their parents, pejoratively, they can give their kids a bigger stipend than the average black kid that's trying to go to college 3,000 miles away from home. Big C, your thoughts?
That's not what they said, Charlton. As long as you don't sign an endorsement deal that violates the conduct code of the university. We know that there's going to be endorsement deals out there. What they say in this bill, Charlton, in this bill that they're trying to get through the Senate, the Congress, Charlton, is that if you take money from an agent, you're not eligible to come back to college.
Yeah.
If you take money from an NFL team, you're not eligible to come back to college. But if you don't get drafted by an NFL team or an NBA team, and you can take an endorsement deal that does not violate the financial code of the NCAA and the institution that you are playing at, you are allowed to come back to college. This is a beneficial deal for the students. Students are not categorized like coaches, but this gives a student an opportunity to go back and further his academic or athletic career, Charlton.
Yeah. Well, I still don't like it. I don't think you should ever tell a man, especially a lot of these kids that are poor, you can come here and give us 4 hours a day.
But they're not telling them that. If you listen to what the bill stated, Charlton, it says that you can sign an endorsement deal.
Yeah.
EA Sports would be an endorsement deal, Charlton. But if you're an underclassman and you're not an All-American or a top-flight name player, you're not going to get that deal with EA Sports. What they are telling those guys who would not have an opportunity to continue their education or even make an NFL club, Charlton, because they weren't even signed as a free agent within a week of the draft, you're able to come back to college and better your prospects for the following year. That in years past, over the last 100 years of college football, Charlton, and basketball, they have not been able to do that. They've had to go out and try to find a 9-to-5 or hustle on the street. So they're here helping out the college athletes.
Yeah, maybe, but I know some agents that have given guys money, Big C, to sign with them. It's all fair and level war.
They said if you don't take money from an agent, if you take the money from the agent and you don't get drafted, you don't get signed as a free agent, oh, well, you're S out of luck.
And see, I hate that they do that to young black kids because the average white, remember the parents down in Southern California, they were signing for their kids to go off to college. They were paying as much as $100,000 or more so their kids.
Reggie Bush's parents?
No, I'm not saying him. He had a girlfriend that helped him out.
You said Southern California. All I can think about Reggie Bush is a few $100,000.
I'm not saying anybody's name. I'm just saying some people have girlfriends.
They didn't even use a brown paper bag. I think they used the trunk of a car.
Hey, some luggage looks like brown paper bags. It's all fair love and war. But I just don't like the way they put limits on black men, because that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about white kids. It's all fair love and war, but the athletes would need to declare their intentions no later than 7 days after the completion of the draft. I still don't like the fact that they try to put shackles on these young, brilliant black men and women, and some of the white kids too, that are going to try to say, you know what, I can make money if I do this, but they're trying to make it so strict. It's all fair love and war.
But they're not making it strict, and this is where we agree to disagree.
Yeah.
They're giving this athlete the option to come back to college, where in years past they did not have that option. They're leaving the door open for the athlete to come back to college to further their education, to better their chances in life, where they didn't have that chance before.
Yeah.
So maybe you're looking at it from a different perspective. You're thinking that the athletes didn't get the opportunity to come back. It's better for them.
No, what I don't like, BC, like you're a smart man, and no matter what you do, you don't need some old white people that are part of the NCAA, who are all making money, mostly off of black labor, to tell you how you can make money. If you have the door open for people to come back and get their scholarship, if they don't get drafted, why put shackles on the young kids, oftentimes 1,000 miles from home? They don't do that to white guys that go to rehab and drug rehab and alcohol rehab. He gets $34 million. There's no restriction on him. I just hate that they want to keep restricting young black kids and say, if you match all the dots, fill in all the dots, then you can come back. But they don't do that to white guys. Well, only 11
but
black
I'm trying
coaches.
to figure out, how is it a restriction when you're giving the kid the opportunity to come back to college and play collegiate sports when he can't fulfill his dreams early, like he thought that he had an opportunity and was left out of the equation by the professional team. Steve Sarkisian, he has clauses in his contract also. I can guarantee you, University of Washington didn't pay him off when he got fired, nor did USC pay him off when he got fired, because they had clauses in the contract, Charlton, code of conduct clauses, that you were going to leave the money on the table. And I can guarantee he has that same clause in that contract down at the University of Texas, that ethics clause, that if he breaks that and gets arrested, he's gone without the money again.
Yeah, I just know they're sports agents, and I know enough of them. They give guys money so they don't starve. And to tell young black kids, as long as you keep starving, if you don't take any money, you can come back. But if you're smart enough to better your life, we don't get you the chance to come back and get an education.
Answer it this direction for me.
Yeah.
So that agent gives him money. He doesn't get drafted. How does he pay that agent back if he doesn't sign with an NFL team or an NBA team?
And maybe he earned it through however they put together the agreement, Big C. I just hate that.
But I'm asking, he's going to have to pay him back. I've had agents before. Agents are not sitting out there working for free. They're just like an attorney working for an athlete. So if that he advances you money, how does he get his money back if you can't fulfill it with a professional contract?
Maybe he fulfilled the contract by doing whatever they agreed to, Big C. People put together deals all the time. And if you listen to what you're saying, as an African-American man down there in the South, where no one who looks like you has a head coaching job in the SEC and only one in the ACC, to tell young black people that you can only come back to school if you stay destitute, and you have a lot of white kids who are not in that same situation. I think the white wealth is like 10 times to 1 to black wealth, based on how slavery created the inequities in wealth in this country. I just hate that they put handcuffs on a black guy.
But that's not what they're saying. They're saying that you can sign endorsement deals.
Yeah.
As long as they don't break the ethics clause of the
Okay,
university.
so what's the ethics clause?
That's what the NCAA is going to be putting in next year anyway.
Yeah.
That players can sign endorsement contracts. That is part of this bill also. This is just an extension of that. This bill is an arm of the previous big bill that was put forth by Congress and the Senate, Charlton, to allow athletes to make money on their likeliness and in endorsement. And so they're saying you can still do that, but if you don't get drafted with this new add-on to the bill, you're allowed to come back to college. So how is that a disadvantage for young black kids?
Because it's saying if you don't violate an ethics clause. What's the ethics clause, Big C? Why is there handcuffs on these young poor? Most of these kids are poor. And now they're telling them if you're smart and you figure out a way to make some money, is that violation of the ethics clause? I just don't like the way they put handcuffs. Let me ask you this question.
So Reggie Bush had handcuffs on him when he took the $325,000 and had to give back the Heisman Trophy.
There's a lot of kids that have taken money, Big C.
I'm asking you that question.
I don't know the answer.
Was there an ethics clause violated when Reggie Bush took the $325,000 and had to give back the Heisman Trophy?
Was there an ethics clause violated when a lot of the schools in the South...
There's only one kid that won the Heisman Trophy that year that had to give it back. We're not talking about an umbrella. I'm talking about one person right there.
Well, I don't know anything about that because I wasn't there, and I'm not going to...
He had to give back the Heisman Trophy.
He didn't have to give it back. He chose to give it back, Big C. But you got to ask, if you're going to be honest, there's a lot of men, a lot of young boys that get recruited and they get taken away from their homes by these oligarchies of power that are old white men that you talk about all the time. They want to look like the guy in the room to get a head coaching job. And now you always put some type of restriction on young black athletes. They don't put that on white men who are trying to go about making money. If the guy doesn't get drafted, let him come back to college and assume his scholarship no matter what he did to make his money. As long as he's making it honestly, I think that's right. But there's a lot of shenanigans that go on to get people to get recruited. And that's just my opinion. I don't like punishing young black kids if they're smart enough to go out and make money. They don't do that to white kids growing up in the suburbs, Big C. They come back home. I know a kid that went to Cal Berkeley. His daddy was a lawyer, had a lot of money, didn't make the football team. He still drove a Porsche. You think it just doesn't make any sense they punish young black kids. That's just my opinion. But
there's a lot of black kids down here in the South, Charlton, who dads are lawyers, doctors.
Not a lot.
And all other
not compared to mainstream.
Who drive those expensive cars also.
Not compared to mainstream.
You have to travel different parts of the United States. From my perspective, I think this is an advantage for the kids who don't get drafted, who don't get signed by professional teams after a week, because that's the signing grace period for all professional teams. They sign all the college kids within a week.
Yeah.
If you don't get signed within that week and you're left out now and have no place to go other than try to find a job, you can now go back to college, continue your education, continue your sports career, and get back into the draft the following year and go in for a second time.
It's amazing. I'm not 100% disagreeing with you, but I'm 99% disagreeing. If you listen to what you just said, in this country, Big C, there are no men who look like you, considered black, African American, in the SEC. Think about it. You got a white man that had a drug and an alcohol problem, just got $34 million. And they always want to put some type of clause on young black men that go out and try to make a decent living, whether they get signed or not. I just don't like that because society's not set up fair. You don't even have one black coach hired in the SEC. And now you're telling me...
They're not forcing any of these kids to go back to college, Charlton. They're giving them the option to come back where they never had the option before, which I think that's a pretty good deal for the student athlete, Charlton, where you get an option to go back and regain your scholarship where in years past you were gone.
Yeah, well, you can have your view on it. I have my view on it. I just don't like the handcuffs they put on young black men, because that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about white kids. Most of them have a job waiting for them.
They don't have to go back to college, Charlton. They can head right on back out there into life as they would have done anyway.
Yeah, but how smart is that you don't go to college in the United States of America? That doesn't make any sense.
That's my point I'm making. Here it is. They're giving them a chance to go back to college, and you're saying they're being handcuffed to be getting the ability to go back to college.
No, I'm just saying they're telling them if you don't make money, then you can go back. But you can have your opinion, but there's no black coach that looks like you in the SEC, and they're saying, thanks, Big C. They handcuffing black men anyway. I don't like it. That's just my opinion. But I do want to touch on the NFL, just like what we talked about. We don't have to agree on things, but they're saying that the minority hiring rate, except for the SEC, is open for jobs. It nearly doubled for minorities, Big C. The number of minority hires for open positions in the NFL nearly doubled to 34.6% in 2021. According to the league's demographics, a study obtained today by the Associated Press, the minority hirings included 3 general managers, 2 head coaches, 3 offensive coordinators, 6 defensive coordinators, 4 special teams coordinators, and 3 quarterback coaches, Big C. The minority hiring rate, think about this, 18.8% in 2020, The interview requests for minority candidates increased to 47% from 22% in 2000. That's good progress, but if you notice, they don't put handcuffs on black men looking for work in the NFL, Big C. It's only kids trying to get their lives better out of college, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they do put handcuffs, Charlton. When you think about black coaches should be head coaches in the NFL.
I agree.
And when you only hire 2, that's an abomination when you constantly talk about a league of 70% African-American, and yet you can't get any African-American coaches in the head coaching role. We had that same number of black assistants last year in the NFL, Charlton.
Yeah.
But when it came to hiring for those head coaching positions, all they do is check the box by going in, getting an interview. They're never considered for the head coaching position. We did a story last week where they felt all they were doing was just going in for a team to check the boxes, Charlton.
Yeah.
And that's how I've always looked at it. They're not really considering hiring them as head coaches. We had 2 offensive coordinators in the Super Bowl last year.
That's right.
That were African-American.
And one
defensive coordinator in the Super Bowl that was African-American. So when you look at the 3 winningest assistant coaches in the NFL last year, they were African-American as far as coordinators, and they don't have a job.
Yeah, I know, and that's part of the system that we live in, Big C. And we know even with that, where they don't shackle you from making money, that's one thing I think the NCAA can improve. They're saying as long as you don't get drafted, you can come back, or you can. I just don't like any handcuffs on black men. We've had enough for 400 years. Unless they're going to put them on white coaches also. If it's fair, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, from what I've understood. But I do think, and we always talk about you have not because you ask not. Even though they haven't been in head coaching positions, there are people making progress in ancillary positions. I know everybody wants to climb the mountaintop fast, Big C, but it's good to see that it's going up for ancillary positions as opposed to going down, Big C. That makes sense to you, your thoughts?
Well, no, it doesn't, Charlton, because we always get the word wait. You got to be patient. You got to give us time.
Yeah.
Now is not the right time. When the hell is the right time? Why do we have to wait? You know what the word wait in white society means, no, Charlton?
What's that?
It means no, you're not getting it. So ancillary positions, you're doing that for what? I mean, everything in society is an ancillary position unless you own something.
Yeah.
And so to say that coaches are in ancillary positions and you get not because you don't ask, they've been asking for decades, Charlton, to be head coaches in the NFL. Every year they go in and interview. I believe that means that they're asking to be the head coach of that organization, or even in a college situation, Charlton, when they go in, they're asking. So by asking, they're not getting. And they're not getting because they don't want to have to tolerate a black guy sitting there face-to-face with them all the time. If to understand that wholeheartedly, Charlton, you need to break down the 14th Amendment of the United States. The 14th Amendment was put into place for blacks to have equal access to society in America in every field.
Yeah.
But the Supreme Court gutted the 14th Amendment to take away those rights of black people, and society has been using it against them ever since.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's why I was telling you, I agree with allowing student athletes, if they don't get drafted, to come back and get your education. And most of those guys are going to be black boys, Big C. I don't like the fact that they have some shenanigans saying unless you do some type of violation. I just want to touch on something that you just talked about. There's a guy by the name of Sam Pittman. He's a coach down in the SEC, so he's not black. He's at Arkansas. His salary is $3 million, Big C. I want to give you an African-American name. His name is Jimmy Lake. He's a head coach at Washington. He makes $3 million. Please listen to what I'm going to say to you. Jimmy Lake, University of Washington, Big C, $3 million salary. Steve Sarkisian also worked at the University of Washington. He was fired for alcohol and substance abuse. Went on to USC, same thing. So no matter what you said about Reggie Bush, Big C, he didn't have a substance abuse issue like Sarkisian did, and the university paid him. And then even with that, he goes to Alabama, plays for Nick Saban on his staff. And then Texas gives him $34.2 million. The guy, Jimmy Lake at Washington, happens to be black. He has to be clean as a whistle, Big C. And he has $3 million a year coming in compared to the salary that a guy that was fired for drug and alcohol abuse, Big C. Your thoughts?
Is this Jimmy Lake's first job at the University of Washington as a head coach?
It is, as far as I know, yeah.
That's not bad for his starting salary as a first-time head coach at a major university. When you look at most of these coaches, Steve Sarkisian, this is his his third head coaching job at a major university. He just came off of coaching a national championship team. So to have a starting salary of $3 million is nothing to close your eyes at, Charlton. That's pretty good, and have a program that is not a top 10 program in the country. So they're playing this guy, and I'm going to assume that he has a lot of incentives laden in his contract based on performance.
Yeah.
You know, it's about where you are and what the conferences are paying. When you look at the money that the Big 12 is paying to its top coaches, you look at what Lincoln Riley is making, you look at what the University of Texas has always paid its coaches, you look at the money tree that has come from Nick Saban, it's about where you are in college football. If you look at the salaries up and down the Pac-12 as a number, none of them are going to equal what you're going to get in the Big 12 or the SEC as a top salary.
Well, there's a guy by the name of Jeff Collins, Georgia Tech. He makes $3.1 million. They have a doormat program at this time in the ACC. Neil Brown, West Virginia, $3.1 million. That's out of the Big 12. And then, I mean, it's all about, all these guys are making in the threes, and there's nothing wrong with guys making more money. I'm for it.
But it's about where college football is important. It's about where college football is a livelihood. I mean, if you go to a premium restaurant, you're going to pay premium money for that meal. If you go to McDonald's, then you're going to pay for a McDonald's meal, Charlton. You know, when you're in a place where football is the number one livelihood of everybody, that's the southeastern part of the United States, Charlton. When you name out those salaries,
yeah,
they think of football before anything else. They have packed houses every Saturday. You come out to the Pac-12, you got to take the fans from 3 games to fill up one stadium.
Well, you might need to get a bigger TV because there's no black men, no matter how big your TV is in the SEC, no matter how many people they're drawing, and that's discrimination. I don't know how you advocate for that conference. Lou Fickle, Cincinnati, $3.4 million. More than Lake out here at Washington. Cincinnati's not a program that people stop what they're doing on Saturdays to pay attention to.
Top 10 program.
Well, it depends on how you rank them, Big C. They still lost to Georgia, which didn't even meet the SEC championship game. But it's all fair and level war. I just wanted to highlight the point that this advocation of college programs that won't even hire people that look like you. It's amazing that you still do that, and you have an African-American woman that bought into the Atlanta dream, the Wnba, and they give black people a chance. It's all fair and level war, but I don't know how you advocate for people that look at you and say, hey, you got to wait another 400 years. We have no openings for you. But I do want to throw this to you real quick. There's some good things happening in the world of NFL about people doing the right thing. Baltimore Ravens, their head coach, John Harbaugh, he paid the bill for the entire seafood restaurant, Big C, in Baltimore at a charity event, giving credit to his wife for the idea. Ravens coach John Harbaugh paid the bill for all the customers in the Baltimore Seafood Eatery. It was a Tuesday night of fundraiser, and he quietly paid for everyone's dinner, Big C, at the restaurant. He did credit his wife, and it's amazing how that's a nice gesture, but the coach making multi-million-dollar contract, nothing wrong with that. But the winningest NFL coach in Baltimore football history, Harbaugh, went to the popular seafood restaurant for a charity fundraiser. He took photos with every fan who asked him, as well as the restaurant staff. Also, before leaving, Big C, he secretly picked up the bill for the 7 families that were there. That's a good gesture, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it was an outstanding night. You know, this was a fundraiser, Charlton, for the bar and restaurant industry in the Baltimore region. They raised over $430,000 that night, you know, for the restaurant and bar industry, Charlton. They helped those employees survive during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And when you think about people who go out of their way and they're not asked to, that's what Harbaugh did in this situation, Charlton. He could have easily walked out like any celebrity.
Yep.
But he took the time to thank all the people who have supported him and the Baltimore Ravens and the bar workers of that region, Charlton, in taking care of everyone's tab inside the restaurant, as well as on the way out, 7 more families that walked in, Charlton.
Yep.
A great gesture by Mr. Harbaugh.
So who's got it better than the people at the charity fund? Nobody. The Harbaughs have been doing their thing. I wanna leap you back into the NFL. Speaking of Harbaugh, what he did, the NFLPA, Big C, it tells players to work together in free agency to push back on teams amid reduced salary cap. When dozens of high-profile names hit the NFL free agency market, Big C, in the offseason, they're often competing against each other for the best contracts of their respective careers, Big C. This offseason, however, player leadership is urging free agents to work together. The NFL Players Association Executive Director, Damari Smith, he told the NFL agents Thursday it's okay to collude in order to get the best possible deals for their clients, encouraging them to push back against teams that are attempting to capitalize on a reduced salary for the 2021 salary cap. Big C, your thoughts?
I mean, Charlton, this is what the owners have done all the time in the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, collusion, because they have their annual meetings and they talk salaries, who and who they will go after and who they're going to let go, Charlton.
Yep.
Trying to keep salaries down. And this is something that, the players need to do as well as their agents. It's not illegal because they're not a corporation.
Yeah.
It's illegal for the owner to do it because they are a corporation, and they still get away with it. So it's now time that the players can take control over the league financially.
Yeah, I believe that. And he also says because of the pandemic influenced losses, this year's cap is expected to be close to $180 million floor negotiated by the NFL and the NFLPA. A member of the team will be tied against to include. They want people to reduce the cap. And, there's always going to be a pushback when it comes to money. But Smith, his message delivered as part of an all-agent video conference, was meant to brand players together ahead of potential mass cuts, restructures, and stingy free agent negotiations. Smith said that the agents this year, they should push back on teams trying to cut players' cap for reasons and should consult with one another with the NFLPA's cap department on the offers they're receiving from teams for free agent players, Big C. Collusion, of course, is an illegal corporate practice in which the league's teams are prohibited from engaging, but there are no laws or rules against workers, in this case players, exchanging information about who's offering how much and when, paperback included. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this opens players up, Charlton. Players in the past have been so tight-lipped about the money they're getting and negotiating, saying, my deal is my deal.
Yep.
This is a time where you all have to come together and collude against the league as a whole, Charlton, to keep salaries as high as possible amongst players, because we know there's going to be massive releases
Really?
of players in free agencies. It's already started, where players have already hit the free agent market. And so by players colluding with each other and agents talking, this will bring the monies back up and keep it more equitable amongst all players in the league. I think this is the greatest advice Mario Smith has ever given.
Now he understands how the good old boys get down, Big C. Is all fair in love and war. That's why they coined the terms all fair in love and war. I want to throw you to our last segment for Black History Month. According to mainstream, but every day we propose our own Black History Day, so we'll do something on Black History every day in the sports universe. At least that's how I look at things, Big C. NBA, basketball tonight, Indianapolis. Indiana's playing at Boston. Boston's been leaking some oil. Houston's at Toronto, even though that game's down in Florida. Sacramento's at Detroit. Utah is taking their act on the road at Miami. They got to be careful of those southern officials, if that makes sense to you. Phoenix at Chicago. LA Clippers at Memphis. Atlanta's at OKC. Charlotte's going to be at Golden State here in Northern California. But the game of the night, Schroeder's coming back for the Lakers. Portland and Damian Lillard coming to town to play the Lakers. Big C, this is a big game for LA. They're still going to be missing Davis, but there's no more wiggle room. If you can't play defense, you don't deserve to win if you don't play defense, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's something that they haven't done, Charlton. They're not the greatest shooting team in the NBA. When you look at their three-point percentages, mid-range, Charlton, but when you look at them defensively, they're an older team. They're having problems keeping up with the younger, up-tempo teams in the NBA, and that's what Portland is, an up-tempo team. This is a team that loves to shoot the three ball. And if the Lakers try to get into a three-point fest, they're taking another hit on that loss column.
Yeah, what I've always loved about the bad boys back in the day, even the Lakers when they played, I remember Kareem, I guess he got into a fisticuff with somebody from Boston, because back in the days, players fought because they were just mean and nasty. A lot of guys, Draymond Green could have played in any era. The Warriors, they win because of Draymond. I know they say Steph Curry, but Steph Curry never clotheslined anybody. He's a great shooter, but their mentality comes from Draymond Green, and the Lakers got to find that Draymond Green mentality if they're going to have success on this season. I know I want to get your feelings on, it might be an easy night for the Miami Heat to maybe get a win over Utah. If they're still celebrating their win over the Lakers, I doubt it, but Miami is in a good chance to at least match them on three-point shooting. Big C, your thoughts?
No, that was no celebration over the Lakers. That was easy walk in the park. Miami's going to get blown out at home tonight, Charlton, by Utah. Utah right now is the most dominant team in the NBA, home and on the road. They're going to go down to Miami, where Miami is struggling. They have a depleted lineup, and they're going to pick up a road win.
Yeah, it's all fair, 11 War. Hopefully that's the only thing they pick up when they go down to South Beach. It's all fair, 11 War. I do appreciate African Americans having the chance to buy into the WNBA. I'm glad that Kelly Loeffler's out, Big C. And I know the Republicans are having a resurrection conference in Orlando, Florida for the man who caused the insurrection. And everybody's acting like it's okay. It's not okay. It's amazing what some people get away with. I hope that everything's going to work out with Tiger Woods. I know he's been sent to another hospital that works a lot with celebrities. And the recovery process is all fair in 11 War. Big C, I want you to just give me your thoughts on Black History Month. I know we brought up so many things that the whole sports universe has paid attention to. Even our brothers and sisters from Cairo, Egypt, have gotten involved with the Big C Sports Podcast. What do you take away from Black History Month, even though it's not over for us, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as all Americans always talk about the First Amendment right and the Second Amendment right, everybody needs to understand what the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States stood for, Charlton. It stood for rights for all Americans, equal rights for all Americans. And it was set up to give black people equal rights in America. Look at how every piece of law that's been passed through the Supreme Court is led by the 14th Amendment. But yet it has been gutted by the Supreme Court, Charlton, to take away and abolish those rights that were given to black people back in 1878. This is what America needs to go back to its true form, Charlton. If the paper that they wrote on was legitimate, then give black people legitimate rights in America.
Yeah, I like that. We also have another hearing. Supreme Court's going to hear a case on March the 2nd. I hope that people can pay attention. They're still trying to get the Voting Rights Act, but it's not going to be successful. That's just my opinion. Big C, happy Black History Month. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble. With all you've got to use, how can you lose, Big C? What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, as we look at the foundations of sports in America, it would not be what it is without the contribution of black Americans, Charlton, on every level. They have made the advancement of sports in America the greatest sports nation in the world. And once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, and first responders. They're the greatest healthcare workers in the world.
They really are. I hope that everybody can rise and shine, enjoy it every single day. Life is a great when you get out and enjoy it. You can enjoy it every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As my mom always says, there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.